بسم الله. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. To proceed. Today inshallah we will talk about al-futuwwa and we will talk about those exempt from fasting and makeup and expiation in the fiqh session. Firstly, Imam al-Harawi said in Bab al-Futuwwa, chapter on futuwwa, Pietistic heroism, and I chose Pietistic heroism here, although it is extremely difficult to translate al-Futuwwa. And why is it difficult to translate al-Futuwwa? Oftentimes we attribute the difficulty of translation to something like English is sort of incapable of accommodating such means or conveying such means, which may not be true, because it may also be that the terminology itself developed meanings within the Muslim culture that were not inherent to the word itself. There are meanings that become sort of implied in certain mustalahat, in certain terminologies that are not really inherent to the word. So the word acquired those meanings because of practice, and because of historical developments. And the science of etymology is a very interesting science, and you could actually learn a lot about concepts from the science of etymology and how words originated and developed. And we will talk about the etymology of this word, al-futuwwa, shortly, inshallah, because it is extremely important for our understanding. If you look at the footnotes in the document I sent on futuwwa, you will find that most of the footnotes, or the biggest footnote, is just about the etymology of the word al-futuwwa, because it is most pertinent here. And we will come back to say why it is most pertinent here. So here, let us say that al-futuwwa literally, until we come back to it and explain it a little bit more, let us say that al-futuwwa literally means young manliness. Fata, young man, futuwwa, young manliness. And then let us say that I chose Pietistic heroism for different reasons, but chivalry had been used and could be used. Gallantry could be used. Their vigor, I entertained using the word vigor, spiritual vigor, because it could be used as well. There are many words that could be used to translate al-futuwwa. So we will come back to this discussion. But first, Imam al-Harawi, rahimahullah, said, قال الله عز وجل إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى. Allah Almighty said, indeed they were youths who believed in their Lord and we increased them in guidance. So they were young men who believed in their Lord and we increased them in guidance. So how is this related to the topic of al-futuwwa? How does this convey the meanings of futuwwa? You will find that as we said before, Imam al-Harawi usually starts with an ayah from the Quran. The relevance of this ayah to the topic is sometimes subtle and sometimes apparent, sometimes obvious, sometimes less obvious. And the relevance here may be somewhat subtle, because the word fitya, إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم, it does not really confer any praise or dispraise. It is not used to praise or dispraise them. It is just used here to describe an age group. But you could also say that it is being used in a positive context, and it may radiate this positivity. And we will come back and talk about how is it inherently positive within the context of pre-Islamic Arabia, to use the word فتى. قالوا سمعنا فتى يذكرهم يقال له إبراهيم. When they said, when they were asking about who destroyed the idols, they said, we heard a fata, a young man, mentioning them or threatening them. His name is Ibrahim. Here, إنهم فتية آمنوا بربهم وزدناهم هدى. Indeed, they were young men who believed in their Lord and increased them in guidance. This is also being used in a positive context, and it is being used to refer to Ashab al-Kahf, the people of the cave, or the dwellers of the cave, and they were believers. And it was also used, قال لفتيانه جعلوا بضاعتهم في رحالهم. It was also used in Surah Yusuf about the boys or the young men who were Yusuf's assistants, alayhi salam, the assistants of Yusuf alayhi salam. He gave them some instructions to put their the belongings of the commodities his brothers came with, to put them back in their luggage so that they may recognize them when they go back, so that they could come back and so on. But here, when it was used in this context, the positivity is not obvious. Maybe the positivity is obvious when it is referring to Ibrahim, when it is referring to Ashab al-Kahf. But here with Yusuf, it is just, قال لفتيانه, he said to his young men or to his boys. And it is being clearly used here to describe an age group. So Imam al-Harawi here goes on to say, نكتة الفتوة. Nukta would be the crux or the heart of the matter. نكتة الفتوة, the heart of futuwwa. ألا تشهد لك فضلا ولا ترى لك حقا وهي على 3 درجات. The heart of futuwwa is that you do not perceive in yourself any advantage or entitlement. The heart of futuwwa is that you do not consider yourself to have any virtue over anyone else. You don't perceive in yourself any advantage or any entitlement. Your intelligence, your strength, your wealth, your smartness, handsomeness, whatever. You don't perceive in yourself any advantage, any virtue, any value, additional value, extra value over anyone else, and you don't see any entitlement. You don't think that you're entitled to anything. But this is why I wanted to defer the discussion on the etymology of futuwwa until we get to that point. Why? Because you may very well say, this is somewhat redundant. Because, whatever will be mentioned here under the chapter of futuwwa will be mentioned elsewhere. Under chapters of ihsan, under the chapters of, tawadu', humbleness, or ihsan, kindness, and perfection, and so on. So what is futuwwa about? Yes, all of the things that will be mentioned here, they will be mentioned under different chapters and different stations. But it is about the angle. It's about the perspective. So futuwwa is addressing all of those common etiquettes and common qualities to different stations from the angle of futuwwa. This is the angle of strength and energy. Because think about it. It is about the age group of young men. So it is about people who are, a little bit older than boys and younger than kuhul and shiyukh. So it's about this age group. what are the natural characteristics of this age group? Strength and energy. Strength, energy, zeal. So let us go back to the etymology now of futuwwa. So futuwwa has not been really mentioned in the Quran or Sunnah or al-Wahi in the context of praise or dispraise. Overall, you may say that it has been used positively in the Quran and the Sunnah, but it does not really carry any moral value, the word itself. And it has not been used by the Wahi. It has not been reintroduced by the Wahi, by the Quran and the Sunnah, as an Islamic concept. Has not been reintroduced by the word Salah. Existed before the Quran and Sunnah or not? Existed before Islam or not? Existed. It has been sort of redefined. When you hear Salah now, what comes to your mind? This Salah that we offer here in the masjid. When you hear the word zakat now, what comes to your mind? Specific ibadah with specific regulations and so on. When you hear the word sawm, what comes? All of those words have been redefined by the Wahi, reintroduced by the Wahi as Islamic concepts. Therefore, it is very easy for us to relate to their new meanings because they have been established now. But they all existed before Islam. The word futuwwa also existed before Islam. But it has not really been redefined by the Wahi. It has not been reintroduced by the Wahi. It has not been sort of calibrated in any different way by the Wahi. Sometimes it was mentioned in this, all the time. It is still being mentioned to refer to an age group. It is still being mentioned in the Wahi to refer to an age group. So how come it became a concept? How could it have become a concept when in the revelation in the Quran and Sunnah it is not a concept, it is just like a name for the age group. Before Islam, the word fata, which means young man, did not only mean the age group. Sometimes they would use the word the fata to refer to the ideal fata, to the ideal young man. They would say he is al-fata, the young man, or fata al-fityan, the young man of the young man, or, which means here like a superlative from young man. So it means that the ideal young man. The ideal young man within the context of the tribal society of Arabia would have many qualities, that they valued. But particularly at the heart of the qualities they valued were three most important qualities that would define you as the ideal young man or the fata. Courage, generosity, and allegiance. And these were extremely important to their society. The ethos of the Arab society was courage and generosity. You have to be courageous, you have to be generous. And allegiance to your tribe, allegiance to your clan was extremely essential. So you would not be the right fata for the tribe, you will not be the right product unless you are loyal to your tribe, you're courageous so that you could defend the tribe, and you are generous so that you could bring about good reputation to the tribe. Like Hatem al-Ta'i, for instance. The accomplishment of Hatem al-Ta'i for Ta'i or his tribe was that he was described as the most generous man in Arabia. Does that make the tribe proud? Absolutely. So these are the three ones: courage, generosity, and allegiance. The moral qualities, but the natural qualities of youth would be energy, and strength. Sometimes the word fata in pre-Islamic Arabia used to imply things that are not Islamically praiseworthy, like extravagance and binge drinking, and because to them al-fata would also be involved in this stuff. Al-fata would also be extravagance, would also be flashy, would also be there is no problem in binge drinking for them. So al-fata was also someone who may be involved in these vices, so not necessarily always virtues. Okay, so then we fast forward. This used to be the context in which they use the word fata, and from which the verbal noun futuwwa comes. So when Islam came, like I said, in the revelation, maybe it was used in a positive context overall, but it was just used to refer to the age group. The first person, Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, in Madaarij As-Saalikeen says that the first person who tried to introduce the futuwwa as an Islamic concept, or that we could trace it back to him, not that he's the first person to introduce it, because apparently he was involved in a discussion with another man, Shaqiq al-Balkhi, who came to him and asked him, what is al-futuwwa in your definition? And then Ja'far ibn Muhammad, that is Ja'far As-Sadiq, ibn Muhammad al-Baqir, ibn Ali, Zayn al-Abidin, ibn al-Husayn, ibn Ali, ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu. So, radiyallahu anhu ajma'in. So Ja'far ibn Muhammad radiyallahu anhu said to him, how do you define it? You're asking me about al-futuwwa, but let me ask you first, how do you define it? And he said to him, إِذَا أُعْطِينَا شَكَرْنَا وَإِذَا مُنِعْنَا صَبَرْنَا. If we were giving something, if we were, given favors or something, then we would be thankful. But if we are deprived, we show patience. Or if if we were deprived or something gets withheld from us, then we show patience. And then Ja'far ibn Muhammad said to him, that's what dogs do in Medina. Dogs are also thankful when you give them something, and they are patient when you withhold it or when you don't give them something. And then he redefined al-futuwwa for him. And then he said to him, in u'tina atharna. If we were given something, then we would favor others with it. We would not just be grateful, but in u'tina atharna. Ja'far ibn Muhammad himself, and I will come back to Ja'far ibn Muhammad because Ja'far ibn Muhammad, Ja'far As-Sadiq, rahimahullah, showed like an ideal example of futuwwa. But then Ja'far As-Sadiq, rahimahullah, this discussion the Ja'far As-Sadiq, rahimahullah, had we did not seem to at this point to think of futuwwa as a code of conduct. It's just a concept. And they were probably trying at the time, those earlier scholars, they were trying at the time to, influenced by the position of futuwwa, praiseworthy position of futuwwa in the pre-Islamic Arab culture, which was still there all over the place. It's still there in the air, pre-Islamic Arab culture. So they tried now to reintroduce it Islamically. And what you sense in their reintroduction, repackaging of the concept of futuwwa is that they wanted to shift it from this physical energy and strength to spiritual energy and strength. Because that is what Islam came to do. Islam came to remind us that we are spiritual beings in a physical within a physical form, but we are primarily and essentially spiritual beings. So that is basically the attempt of the scholars, the early scholars of Islam, when they tried to reintroduce al-futuwwa to us, redefine al-futuwwa for us, drawing on the inherent positivity in the word from pre-Islamic Arabia, but recognizing that also in pre-Islamic Arabia, the word did have suboptimal implications and connotations, sometimes, evil ones. So they wanted to reintroduce it. Then came Abu Abdurrahman As-Saalikeen rahimahullah. He's the first one to author a book on al-futuwwa. Abu Abdurrahman As-Saalikeen rahimahullah was the first one to author a book on the concept of al-futuwwa. Now al-futuwwa, by this time, this is 5th century, talking about Ja'far as-Sadiq rahimahullah. When we are talking about Ja'far as-Sadiq rahimahullah, we're talking about in the first, and beginning of 2nd centuries. When we're talking about Abu Abdurrahman As-Saalikeen, we're talking about in the 4th, beginning of 5th century. So by the end of 4th, beginning of 5th century, now Abu Abdurrahman As-Saalikeen is writing a book called al-futuwwa. This is a synthetic concept. The revelation did not necessarily talk about al-futuwwa, but Abu Abdurrahman As-Saalikeen rahimahullah now is writing a whole book about al-futuwwa. And what he tried to do in this book is basically to introduce the futuwwa as a complete code of conduct for the strongest believers, spiritually. So where did he bring proofs from? If you read his book, and it is a very nice book, it is full of proofs, all traceable to the Prophet all the way, with chains of narrations, because he wanted to remind people in his time of the importance of the chains of narration. So he was always using a chain of narration, going from him all the way to the Prophet ﷺ, to say that we're not making this up. We're not concocting a new thing. We're not making things up. But again, at the same time, he's using ayat and ahadith that talk about Islamic virtues and Islamic etiquettes that have not been called futuwwa by Allah or His Messenger. All good Islamic etiquettes, basically. Proper way of dealing with Allah, proper way of dealing with the creation. That is what Kitab al-Futuwwa, or this book on futuwwa by Abu Abdurrahman As-Saalikeen rahimahullah, was about. So, but we sense from this that by the time of Abu Abdurrahman As-Saalikeen, this concept has grown to being a complete code of conduct, like the code of chivalry, for instance. So then what happened? Certainly the scholars of the scholars of early proper Sunni tasawwuf, they had always emphasized the importance of authenticity, the importance of tracking or tracing all practices back to the Prophet ﷺ. But then, like all good concepts, they are not left alone by the people. So afterwards, futuwwa started to become used in different contexts. Like, for instance, militias were called, fraternities, professional unions or professional guilds, used the concept. So, and it became associated with paramilitary organizations and professional guilds, different fraternities. They added to it different concoctions, like in order for you to be inducted into this futuwwa or initiated into the that track or that pathway or tariqa, then you will have to wear pants, and you will have to they'll have to have an initiation for you, and it's like fraternities almost, and it tells you that a lot of this stuff has to do with human need for sense of belonging and distinction, and all of the forms and all of the ritualism and symbolism, not limited to religion. Look at the fraternities and what they do, all of the ritualism and symbolism, because the ritualism and symbolism just gives basically value and distinction to certain practices. So after this concept has, after, the early masters of proper Sunni Tasawwuf introduced this concept, tried to redefine futuwwa, tried to reintroduce it, tried to emphasize the spiritual aspect, and that we're not talking now about physical strength and energy. We're talking about the spiritual strength and energy, the spiritual vigor. We're talking about the values of courage, generosity, and allegiance from an Islamic perspective. Then futuwwa was used for these many other purposes. Now, at one point, al-Nasr li-Dinillah was a Khalifa Abbasi, and that is when politics comes into the picture. And al-Nasr li-Dinillah as Khalifa Abbasi in the beginning of the 7th century, under the threat of the Mongols from the east and the Crusaders from the west, he wanted to use that concept of al-futuwwa with the help of Sahrawardi rahimahullah, who is the good one, not Shihab ad-Din, Umar ibn Muhammad Sahrawardi, who is a good scholar, solicited his help to use the concept of futuwwa as a code of conduct for paramilitary organizations that will protect the Khilafah. And al-Nasr li-Dinillah rahimahullah became part of this organization. And then this organization started to basically promote the futuwwa as a code of conduct and promote the innovated ritualism, wearing the pants, getting this drink, which is water, salt water, water with salt in it, and drinking it in a certain way. You add the influence of politics to this, and that it becomes a huge thing. Futuwwa became a huge thing. And then people look for validation. So you concoct those rituals. You're looking now for validation. So they concocted chains of transmission all the way up to Ali ibn Abi Talib, going through al-Nasr li-Dinillah, but going all the way up to Ali ibn Abi Talib. That chain is just Muslim, is just dark. It is full of majahil, people who are not known or recognized at all. But certainly you want to figure out a way to validate your practices. So they concocted that chain of transmission. And then they started to add things, and now the pants that you wear for this initiation, where did this concept come from? It came from Ali ibn Abi Talib. Okay. But then it was not enough for some people. The pants actually some people said that the pants were sent down from the heavens in a box. And, then the Prophet ﷺ wore them, and then the Prophet ﷺ was the first one to basically hand them over to Ali ibn Abi Talib to wear at initiation. A big story was created. يا بني آدم قد أنزلنا عليكم لباسا يواري سوآتكم وريشا ولباس التقوى ذلك خير. They used this ayah to say, O children of Adam, we had sent down for you garments to cover your nakedness. They said that this is the garment that was sent down, the pants of futuwwa. But But at any rate, so you will find that at one point it became really a big issue, and then it just had all of these things added to it. So Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah was asked about al-futuwwa, and it is amazing. Most quoted and most misquoted and least understood person, Imam Taymiyyah rahimahullah, Shaykh al-Islam. So people, when people quote him on this issue, the ijtiza, the misquotation is just huge. So people say that he condemned it. No, he did not condemn it. He recognized the pure beginnings and he recognized the virtues, but he condemned the additions, the innovations, and all of those practices that had no validation whatsoever in the Quran or Sunnah. That is what he condemned, but he recognized that whatever virtues he said clearly, whatever virtues they invite the people to, these are good virtues, if they are established in the Quran and the Sunnah. Whatever innovations they invite the people to, these are bad innovations that are not to be condoned and not to be practiced. And the problem is, when he did things of this nature, people said that he was like against the tradition, opposed to the tradition. Well, he's opposed, he is trying to protect the tradition from interpolation, from innovations, from additions that do not belong to the tradition. I would not call this being anti-traditional. I would call this being pro-tradition, because I want to protect the tradition from these innovations. Anyway, and it's just like, it's it's so amazing, particularly when you hear this, like when you hear this accusation that he was against the tradition. I don't know where this is coming from. When he is clearly, even when it comes to the four madhahib, he is clearly the one who said, لا يكاد الحق يخرج منها, that the truth almost never diverges from the four madhahib, except in a few matters that they disagreed over. And he was not the first one to say this, and it is clearly obvious that the agreement of four scholars would not count as a bona fide consensus, because the definition of consensus does not really apply to the agreement of four scholars, despite their enormous weight, caliber, and value in our tradition. Anyway, so now futuwwa became tainted with those innovations, but certainly the concept itself is a valid concept. Futuwwa devolved in certain societies, like in Egypt, for instance. If you ask people about futuwwa, futuwwa is a noun used for the baltajiyya, the thugs, in different. It's Baltaji in Egypt, or Baltajiyya in Egypt, Shabiha in Syria. You must have heard these words. So futuwwa in Egypt is used to refer to those thugs who used to be violent and intimidate entire neighborhoods and influence great sort of authority over entire neighborhoods. But they would still act chivalrous sometimes. And that is what was left of futuwwa in them. They would protect the women of the neighborhood. They would act chivalrous sometimes. But in any gang culture, people still act chivalrous sometimes. They will protect their women, right? That's just because human beings do not like to think of themselves as evil. So they have to throw into the mix some chivalrous qualities to say, to not see themselves as pure evil. Okay, but the concept devolved into this, and yet what Sheikh here is referring to, the concept that the Sheikh is referring to, is this valid concept of spiritual energy and strength, spiritual vigor. That is how we borrow those implications from young manliness. Young manliness was about physical strength and energy, We borrowed those concepts, and now we are referring to spiritual energy and strength and vigor as spiritual futuwwa. Spiritual futuwwa. The main qualities in that spiritual futuwwa, the two moral legs of the spiritual futuwwa, would be courage and generosity. At the end of the day, it is ihsan lil-khalq. It is to be good to people and to favor people over yourself. The one example I will give you here also goes back all the way to Ja'far ibn Muhammad, rahimahullah ta'ala, Ja'far As-Sadiq, rahimahullah ta'ala, radiyallahu an aba'ih. The one example here is when Ja'far As-Sadiq was at Al-Kaaba and someone was having a nap and woke up and saw that his himyan, his belt, was stolen, and it had 1,000 dinars. And then he grabbed Ja'far As-Sadiq. First of all, he didn't know him. He just grabbed Ja'far As-Sadiq, first the one who's next to him, and he accused them of stealing his belt with the 1,000 dinars. So what did Ja'far As-Sadiq do? He took him home and he gave him the 1,000 dinars. And he asked, the narration does not say it, but probably he asked him to forgive him that the belt is now gone. But he did not defend himself. He did not say, I didn't steal it. He said, what are you missing? The 1,000 dinars. Here is the 1,000 dinars. And then the man found the himyan, found the belt, and found the 1,000 dinars, went back to Ja'far As-Sadiq and apologized to him and wanted to give him back his money. And Ja'far As-Sadiq said, he said that this is something I gave up for Allah, and I wouldn't take it back. And he refused, adamantly refused to take it back. So what did he exhibit here, Ja'far As-Sadiq? What did he exhibit? Al-Futuwwa. It is the spiritual strength and vigor, spiritual energy, vigor, strength. When he felt that the man is distressed because he lost, someone who came to Hajj, maybe he came from Afghanistan or Morocco or some place far away, and this is all the money he has. Can you imagine how distressed you would be in this case? To lose all the money that you have. You came to Hajj from 2,000 miles away, or maybe less, 500 miles away, and then you lost all of your money. And you woke up and you found, can you imagine the shock, the stress that this man was suffering from? Certainly. So Ja'far As-Sadiq said to himself here, why should I cause him more distress by defending myself? Actually, I should comfort him, by even tacitly acknowledging that I may have taken the money, so that he gets this sort of immediate comfort. And that's it. So he said, I am up to it. He said to himself, I am up to it. I can do this. I should be able to do this. That is futuwwa. That is futuwwa. If you want to use this in our times, it is basically drawing from your psychological reserve to comfort other people. Let us say you are the head of the household, and you were told that that you got laid off, or you're getting laid off, or something of that nature. And you go back home, and instead of venting out to comfort yourself, and instead of talking to your wife so that she may comfort you, you say to yourself, no, I will not tell her because that may distress her. Or vice versa, if she had bad news. And actually the best example on this was the example of a sahabiya, a female companion, not a companion. A story when her son died, and yeah. So here you say to yourself, no, I am up to it. I can handle this alone without causing distress to him or her. I can handle this. And that is al-futuwwa. And that is what Ja'far ibn Muhammad, Ja'far as-Sadiq, rahimahullah ta'ala, exhibited in that incident. Is futuwwa clear? Okay, now we'll just read what the Sheikh said, because all of it will overlap with other stations. The Sheikh said, الدرجة الأولى ترك الخصومة. The first level, refraining from disputation, except when this disputation is for the sake of Allah, as the Prophet ﷺ never argued with anyone, never disagreed with anyone, except when it was for the sake of Allah, then he would certainly defend the rights of Allah. وَالتَّغَافُلْ عَنِ الزَّلَّةِ, ignoring the slips of others. Ignoring the slips of others. This concept of التغافل, when the sister said last time that, what do you do if you're being taken advantage of? And I told her, let them take advantage of you. It's the concept of tagaful. Okay, ignore it. This is not to embolden bad people or evil people. You do not embolden evil people. As a society, the society that will allow evil people to transgress and to oppress others is a society that will not be glorified by Allah. But oftentimes in interpersonal relationships, there is a huge need for tagaful, ignore, overlook, turn the blind eye, look the other way. I did not see it. Your son does something that is irritating. You look the other way. I did not see it. Tagaful is important for your own sanity before anyone else's. وَنِسْيَانِ الْأَذِيَّةِ, forgetting the harm. Not only to forgive, but to forget. الدرجة الثانية. So here is this daraja is with showing futuwwa with the people. Ja'far ibn Muhammad, this example, take the 1,000 dinars. I can handle this. I will not cause you more distress. This is the example that you want to remember. الدرجة الثانية, the second level. أن تقرب من يقصيك, to bring closer those who push you away. وتكرم من يؤذيك, to show generosity to those who hurt you. وتعتذر إلى من يجني عليك, to apologize to those who wrong you. The first two are clear. أن تقرب من يقصيك, to bring closer those who push you away. As the Prophet ﷺ said to Uqba ibn Amir, صل من قطعك, join those, reach out to those who cut you off. وَتُكْرِمَ مَنْ يُؤْذِيكَ, to show generosity to those who hurt you. As the Prophet ﷺ said to Uqba ibn Amir, وَأَعْطِ مَنْ حَرَمَكَ, and give to those who withhold from you, who are miserly with you. But وَتَعْتَذِرَ إِلَى مَنْ يَجْنِي عَلَيْكَ, to apologize to those who wrong you. How could you apologize to someone who wronged you? To apologize to them here, it is an you're acknowledging, or it's an acknowledgement of the fact that Allah caused them to wrong you because you probably deserved it. You're likely deserved it. So you're apologizing to them that my earlier sin made me deserving of your transgression. So your transgression is a byproduct of my earlier sin. So I must have sinned against Allah or against someone, even 20 years ago, 40 years ago, and I am now seeing it. If your kids are treating you in a certain way that is undesirable, think about something that you may have done to your parents. Think about one day that you may have yelled at one of your parents, or you have raised your voice while talking to one of your parents. And then say to yourself, I deserve it. And you could even go to your kid and tell him, I'm sorry, it seems that I have done this. I have caused this to happen to me. And in some way, I have caused you to be tested, tubtala, by this transgression. This is not to absolve the guilty of guilt, but this is to recognize the root cause, that you may be the root cause. You're likely the root cause most of the time. There are very few times when you talk about al-Anbiya and the Prophet ﷺ being harmed by, the kuffar of Quraysh or somebody. It is, clearly this will not apply to this example. But most of the time, for most of us, and most of the time, you're being transgressed because you were at one point a transgressor. Or you have erred at one point, or you have sinned at one point against Allah or the people. So then you say to yourself that this qadar, this was my qadar and his qadar because of my earlier mistake. And then if you go and apologize to them and tell them why you're apologizing, I think they'll be surprised. And this may sort of stimulate them or provoke them to reflect on their own condition and to recognize that this sin they committed today will come back and hurt them at one point in the future unless they truly, truly repent. Truly, truly repent. And in this way, you would have acknowledged your sin and shown remorse, and you would have also encouraged them to repent from their sin. And then the Sheikh said, you do all of this, you bring closer to you those who push you away, you give to those who deprive you, and you apologize to those who wrong you, samahatan la kazma, out of clemency, not mere restraint, wa mawaddatan la musabara, and out of compassion, not mere endurance. Out of clemency, not mere restraint, and out of compassion, not mere endurance. It's not like I will tolerate you. It is, I care for you. I want the best for you. It is my compassion towards you that is preventing me from talking back or from avenging myself in any way. Then the Sheikh said, الدرجة الثالثة ألا تتعلق في السير بدليل. The third level is to not make your journey contingent on proofs. Your march to Allah should not wait until you receive proofs. Like someone sends you an invitation, someone important, famous, popular, sends you an invitation. You don't interrogate the messenger. You don't wait to march to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala until you receive proofs. He will come back and explain this a little bit more. He said, وَلَا تَشُوبَ إِجَابَتَكَ بِعِوَضٍ. Do not taint your responsiveness with the desire of compensation. You respond to Allah without the desire of compensation, out of compliance, conformity, out of love, out of recognition that He created me, He made me, He brought me here. He is deserving of my obedience and my responsiveness. And then he said finally, وَلَا تَقِفَ فِي شُهُودِكَ عَلَى رَسْمٍ. Do not observe any forms in your shuhud. In your witnessing of Allah, all forms will disappear because the light of His appearance or His tajalli will dissipate all forms from your sight, including the darkest of all forms, which is your nafs, your ego, the darkest medium that obstructs your vision, that is your heart vision. Your insight is your nafs. And Allah's, the light of His tajalli or appearance should dissipate and decimate that darkness. Then he said, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ مَنْ أَحْوَجَ عَدُوَّهُ إِلَى شَفَاعَةٍ وَلَمْ يَخْجَلْ مِنَ الْمَعْذِرَةِ إِلَيْهِ لَمْ يَشُمَّ رَائِحَةَ الْفُتُوَّةِ. Know that one who causes his enemy to seek an intercession, and is not too shy to listen to his apologies has nothing to do with futuwwa. If you can handle listening to someone's apology, you have no claim to futuwwa whatsoever. You should be too shy to listen to someone apologizing to you. You should hasten to accept their apology before they speak. You should hasten to amend the rift between you before they seek intercession. Before they look for someone to intercede between you and them, you should be willing to forgive and forget and move on. If you want to be a fata or a fata, a young man or a young woman, spiritually young, meaning having that. Keep in mind, when they used fata afterwards in Islam, because of this emphasis on the spiritual aspect, it was not limited to one age group. So you could say that someone who's 60, he's a real fata, meaning that he has the spiritual vigor. Yes. And then he said, وفي علم الخصوص من طلب نور الحقيقة على قدم الاستدلال لم يحل له دعوى الفتوى أبدا. And in the knowledge of the elites, the one who seeks the light of truth through reasoning is not entitled to the claim of futuwwa. If you seek the light of truth, من طلب نور الحقيقة على قدم الاستدلال لم يحل له دعوى الفتوى أبدا. If you seek the light of truth, through reasoning, you will never be entitled to futuwwa. If al-ilm al-daruri, the necessary knowledge, necessary recognition, requires of you to listen to arguments about the ontological, evidence on the existence of God, the teleological evidence on the existence of God, the cosmological evidence on the existence of God. If you're really doing this to find, to figure out that God exists, that is not in any way, shape, or form futuwwa. That is not spiritual vigor or zeal, spiritual vigor or strength whatsoever, because the existence of God is ilm daruri. He is the proof on everything else. He is the dalil to everything else. He is the proof on everything else. Your mere existence says that there is a maker, that there is, that God brought you here. So people who, and this is not to say that we do not need, we do not need those proofs. For those who need them, we're talking about futuwwa here. We're not talking about sitting down with someone who is skeptic or someone who is on the verge or someone who's not Muslim and someone who's atheist and just trying to construct an argument to convince them. No, we're not saying this. But we're saying if you really need to listen to these arguments to recognize the existence and greatness and glory of God, then you do not belong to the station of futuwwa. You don't have that spiritual vigor or strength, and you should not claim it. And we'll stop here, and then we'll take 7 minutes off for like a break, and then come back for al-fiqh, because we need the whole 60 minutes to finish what we will discuss in fiqh, inshallah.